So hey there, in our CEO stories, we've brought you into Bangalore today. And I'm with the CEO and MD of 3M in the India region. And she's dynamic, she's young, and she's someone you want to meet right away. So let me quickly introduce to you Debarati. Hi, Deva.
Hi, Chetna. How are you doing?
I'm great, and it's so good to be here at your beautiful home in Bangalore and to meet you. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I wouldn't agree with the young part, but the rest of it, yes.
So tell me, and they want to know, they're about 18, 19, sitting there saying, how do we be in her shoes one day? So tell me, when you were young, what were you thinking about becoming as you grow older?
I did have a lot of curiosity. I really didn't know what I was going to do when I grew up. I used to be my father's apprentice. My dad was an engineer. So I was normally with the one who was called upon if the light went off or we had to change a fuse wire. So early days, I did get a love for technology, for engineering, was good in math and physics, and it kind of naturally led to a career, or at least a career choice in engineering. And I did my engineering degree in electronics and telecommunications. Always thought that I was going to go into the path of an MS and a PhD. Back then, it was called VLSI, Integrated Circuit Technology. And then there was a bit of a twist, and I moved into a management career.
Okay, exciting. So you were all set to do this research, and a lot of them are looking at technology and saying MS and PhD. So how did that change happen?
In life, sometimes there are these random string of events, but they kind of come together and they make sense to you at the end of the day. So I always thought that I'll be in research. I was a technology lover. But then I just happened to meet my brother-in-law, my now brother-in-law, who was from XLRI and had a career in management. He was a banker. We got talking about the world. We got talking about economics. We got talking about what's going on in banking industry. And I thought, this is really exciting. Yeah. I could do this. Yeah. He was from XLRI, and I just went in for the Excel entrance test and somehow made it and got in. And then it felt like it was the right calling for my life.
The best thing you ever did.
Absolutely.
And tell me now, being in a manufacturing company, you've been with 3M
for 20 years.
Wow.
Yes.
So does this feel home as well to you because of your engineering background?
It really does. And I was recently interviewed by CNBC, and I was sharing this, why we have long careers, why 3Mers like me have had long careers, is because 3M is in so many different verticals, so many different technology platforms. It hasn't allowed me to get bored with anything. And the closet geek in my head loves it. Because I can, if there's any curiosity that I have about emerging frontiers in science and technology, it's definitely providing me that, that constant source of inspiration and getting excited about it. So even though, obviously I'm in the second half of my career, if one can think of it that way, I really feel like there's a lot of runway ahead, and I would probably be doing this for a long time. They'll have to drag me off someday.
Okay. So Deva, tell me, you stuck 20 years to one organization. As I look at some of the people watching the show, A, they can't think 20 years long. B, they worry about the first place I get into. Is that the right place for me to be in? Where should I be? Where should I find my calling? And which is the right industry to be in, etc. So what would you want to say to them?
That's a lot of good questions rolled into one. I think none of us, candidly speaking, when we were together in XLRI, we didn't really think we would be living this long. I mean, we couldn't. You're not supposed to, when you're 19, 20, look this far ahead. Yeah. 3M was the fourth company that I joined in 4 years after Excel, after graduation. So clearly, there were places that I worked in which were good, gave me a lot of learning, but not necessarily where I felt that I belonged or that I was going to spend a lot of time in. The one advice that I have for young adults at this point in time is don't worry too much about, is this my final path?
Right.
Because each learning, each segment of your life's performance will open additional doors, will give you new learnings that actually make those doors better paths for you. I never thought I'll be in 3M for 20 years. I still remember when I joined 3M and we would meet people from US or from the Western world. They'd come in and say they'd spent 20 years, 25 years. And I used to think, why? Didn't they get any other job? Like, why are they in this company for this long? And then you realize, as I was mentioning, because of the diversity of the company, diversity of technologies, experiences, I've worked in, I think now over 35, 40 countries, very directly engaging with the countries. It just made sense for me to keep growing here because I never feel like I know it all. I just haven't gotten there. and I doubt if I'll ever get there. Maybe one final thought is we worry too much when we are selecting our path. You know, my engineering versus MBA is a good example. I didn't follow the path of a researcher in electronics, but at the same time, that engineering education gave me this grounding in technology, the curiosity and connecting the dots that I can apply in my role today, in my management role, leading a technology enterprise.
Yeah, so every experience counts. Grab what you get is what you're saying.
Right.
And move with your gut, or whether it feels right to you or not.
Your heart will tell you. Sometimes your brain will do too much analysis.
So tell me, you make it all seem so beautiful, but were there challenges along the way at which point you felt, hey there, how do I deal with this now?
I think every day. Every day. And I think challenges are the true beauty of life, not success. Because success comes from you having dealt with challenges, either for that round itself or as a practice round for the next round that's coming your way. But let me go back and talk about one of my earliest challenges when I was in engineering, and I was looking at my path ahead, and I was obviously thinking of going to the US and doing my MS PhD, as I mentioned to you. I got into a lot of really A-grade schools, including UT Austin. I got tuition waivers from every one of them. I didn't get the scholarship that I needed, and my parents weren't that well-to-do, so I had to change track. But from some of those early learnings, what I tell my team members now or youngsters that I meet is, for sure your plan A will not work because it'll look a little different. For even the luckiest people, the plan A would probably be A+ or A-, somewhere there. So you have got to be ready with alternate scenarios. You got to have your plan B and plan C ready, and have the humility to accept that things may not work out, but have the courage to go around that and then say, how am I going to bring to life this next plan that I absolutely have to now turn on?
Talking about you as a person, so you've been a single mom, you've lived in a foreign country without too much of family support, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And you've been this full-time, high-achieving person at work. How did you balance some of that?
And again, this is a very personal opinion, right? So balance is mythical if you think you're always going to be in balance. Balance is about giving time at the right time to the right priorities. So on a Sunday morning, the basketball tournament is my #1 priority, and I give it all. On Monday morning, the 6 a.m. meeting is my priority, and I give it all. So balance is something that I don't necessarily aspire for, but sanity is what I aspire for. I enjoy life, and as such, I try to make sure that I have enough time, whether it be time with my dog, time to sit out and smell the flowers and enjoy, be one with nature, do my yoga. Spend time with my son, who is now a 20-year-old, a very articulate, really fun young adult. So it's just, you work as hard as you can. You try to balance. You try to also reward yourself. So my reward sometimes was just a Friday evening glass of wine and watching a serial that I liked.
I think that's beautiful what you say, because I find with a lot of women, you give to your work, and then you come back with a little bit of guilt, and you give to the home, and then you carry that guilt back with you, and you just don't feel like giving yourself enough.
Yes,
so that's beautiful, the glass of wine.
Yes, little things, little rewards. And then I had a friend of mine in the US who would make sure that I went out with her one day a month.
Wow.
I would find a babysitter, have my son, hang with a babysitter, and actually just go out for one day. Doesn't sound like a lot, but those sanity nights for me were really important, really, really important. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to pursue our calling. And don't let guilt hold you back, because guilt has no place in it.
So Deva, let's talk about setbacks and failures, because that's something I know my audience wants to know. How did you deal? Did you have a failure, and how did you deal with it?
Several. Maybe talk about one of them. But I think what your audience, especially young adults in your audience, should know and believe is 20 years down the road, they'll be sitting on a chair and they'll be talking about their failures and how much they learn from it. So from my perspective, every failure is a learning experience. And when you're going through it, it seems so daunting. It seems like you can't get past it. But you've got to know you're in a tunnel, and the tunnel does get over, and there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. It's having that conviction when you're in the middle of it that's really important. I'll share one fairly recent history, and probably several of your audience would also have heard of it. I headed the oil and gas business for 3M Company, a very large, almost $1 billion enterprise-wide business. When I joined that business, oil was trading at $114 to a barrel. When I left the business, oil was trading at $30 a barrel.
Okay.
So imagine going through that in the space of 3.5 years. So it was very clear that the initial vision that we had was not going to be realized, for sure, in the near term.
Right.
And there are terms that we, of course, use, like it's going to be a V recovery or a U recovery or a W recovery. This was one that was termed by the industry a bathtub, which meant it's going to stay at the bottom for a long time.
Yeah.
And who knows when that recovery would come. So one of the toughest things I had to do was imagine this was my baby at work, right? It was my creation. I put in my, sweat and toil and labor behind it. And I went to the CEO along with a few senior leaders and said, it's time for us to wind this, get me out of my job. You cannot be paying me to do this. And it's a very hard thing. A lot of us get very defensive when our own positions are no longer relevant. But I actually went into the CEO's office to the corporate operating committee and told them, you should be winding my position back. And I can tell you the respect I got from the entire operating committee, where they saw my courage to stand in front of the CEO and say, I shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be paying me for this. Wow. This structure is no longer relevant to the market. Wow. So I would say that, today when I look back, you could term it a failure, you could term it a learning experience, but it was definitely a character building moment for me. And when you're going through something that feels like a failure, fast forward 20 years in your mind and put yourself in my chair. And I can tell all your young listeners and viewers, they would be talking about those moments 20 years in future.
How beautiful. Not only character building, character defining and exhibiting.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, and no wonder you are in this position today. But talking about all of that, the mindsets, the habits that actually made you successful, would you want to share some of those with us?
So I'll share one that used to bug my parents no end. So I used to get up at 4:35 a.m., even as a 5-year-old, as a 6-year-old, and I would be sitting under my table, going through all my school books and trying to get ready for the day. Now, I know it sounds completely bizarre. Imagine being a parent of a 5-year-old who's getting up at 5 in the morning and going through their school bag. So it used to drive my parents insane. But even today, I do get up at, ungodly hour, I must say, at 4:35. And those 2 to 3 hours that I get in the morning of work time, calm time, sometimes on weekends, I don't work. I listen to music, I read my newspaper, read something else that I'm trying to read. But that calm, that early morning head start that I have, and I've talked to a lot of peers, it is a little bit in common, I would say, of a vast majority of CEOs that I talk to. There is something about that morning time and the calm and peace and the head start you get in the day. We've heard this over and over again, there's no shortcut to success. The way I translate it in my world is work harder than anybody else you know. So be that person who's working harder than anybody else in your reference group, in your peer group, in your work, in your college, whatever be that setting, be the person who's working the hardest.
Wow. I think that is some advice, because a lot of people look at hard work as an apology and saying success doesn't come on the back of hard work, it comes on smart work, it comes on being, savvy. But you're saying, listen, just pure play, work hard.
Absolutely. That doesn't mean be stupid, but you've got to be smart. But just by being smart, you don't necessarily get to the end point. It's not enough. It's not enough.
If there was one piece of advice, I know you've given us some beautiful gems as we've spoken, but if there was one more piece of advice you want to give my audience, what would that be?
And you mentioned your audience is young adults, young audience. I have a 20-year-old son. And I often tell him this because I saw his journey, especially as he was getting through high school. And the one phrase that I use is, don't let anybody tell you what you cannot do. Everybody has the opportunity of telling you what you can do because they may have noticed a talent in you that they think can come to fruition if you just recognize it. But the negative feedback from society, from your professors, from your teachers, from your parents, there's no place for that negative feedback. There should be no place for that negative feedback in your brain. As a kid, I was the second daughter of a very, very middle-class couple. And back in our generation, girls were being told they couldn't be good in math, they couldn't be good in science, they couldn't get into engineering. I grew up with that, and every time somebody told me I couldn't do something, that became my mantra, that became my clarion call for actually doing it.
Wow. Reminds me of the dialogue from Pursuit of Happiness,
Yes.
where Will Smith tells his son this.
Yes.
So powerful.
Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
But tell me, you're CEO and MD of this huge company in India. What next? What do you look forward to? What keeps you going every morning?
You know, I really don't believe I have gotten anywhere yet. Yes, CEO and MD, the title sounds big. But in my learning journey, I really feel like I'm in the first quadrant even. So there should be a lot ahead of me in terms of learning. The titles, the positions, I don't worry about that. But I do believe that I focus on impact, and I'm looking for bigger and bigger impact, both at work, but also my other passion is working with nonprofits and really looking at making a difference societally, especially looking in the field that I'm very passionate about of single mothers and early childhood education.
No, I'm sure you will, and I'm sure the viewers are going to keep tracking all your successes going forward. And thank you so much for sharing that with us, Deba. It was a huge pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Chetna. It was fun to talk to you as always.
Okay, so if you've enjoyed the show and if you have questions you want Deba to answer or you want me to answer, put all of them down in the comment section below the video. Press that little subscribe button and the bell next to the subscribe button as well to get your notifications, and happy watching.